Hey guys, tonight we begin a quiet drift through one of the strangest truths about modern pop culture. That almost every superhero we watch on screen, reading comics, or fall asleep listening to, is simply an ancient myth wearing a new costume. Most people don't realize it, but the superhuman strength of today's blockbusters, the chosen warriors, the tragic geniuses, even the tricksters, all of them existed thousands of years before Marvel or DC were ever imagined. If you take away the capes, the gadgets, and the CGI, most modern superheroes are nearly identical to ancient gods and legendary heroes, right down to their flaws. From Hercules to Achilles, from Odysseus to the Norse gods, their shadows stretch quietly into our movie theaters and comic panels even today. Before we wander deeper, picture the soft hum of a movie projector somewhere behind you. Imagine the faint glow of a screen in a dark room. The air feels still, carrying traces of warm popcorn, old paper, and the slightly metallic scent of cooled film reels. And somewhere in that dimness, beneath all the noise of our modern world, the myths whisper, unchanged, patient, waiting to be rediscovered. And let us be honest, most of us wouldn't survive long inside those ancient stories. The monsters alone would send anyone running, the curses would break even the bravest souls, and the heroic quests were basically long-distance endurance tests mixed with family trauma, divine jealousy, and terrible weather. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you re-listening from, and what time it is. It is always calming to see this little community drifting through the past together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The room grows a little quieter once the introduction fades, as though the air itself wants to settle before the story opens fully. Somewhere beyond the window, a faint nighttime breeze brushes past, carrying the soft, irregular rhythm of distant traffic, a modern lullaby. But inside this calm darkness, we drift backward, toward a truth that feels older than any comic panel, any cinema screen, any hero standing in a glowing costume. Superheroes didn't begin in the 20th century. They began around a fire, long before skyscrapers and special effects. People gathered under open skies, whispering stories about beings who were too strong, too clever, too stubborn, or too flawed to ever be ordinary. They were made to explain storms, wars, seasons, loss, bravery, and the strange unpredictability of life. These ancient stories were memory anchors, ways to help humans understand the world long before science offered clear answers. Over time, those stories settled into our bones. And even now, in a world of neon lights and streaming platforms, they remain quietly alive. If you strip a modern superhero down to the core, remove the suit, the origin story, the studio branding, something familiar appears. A pattern, a shape, a myth, the same structure that ancient storytellers carved into stone and carried through generations. A lonely outsider blessed with strength no one else understands. A brilliant mind walking a dangerous line between order and chaos. A warrior shaped by trials, sharpened by pain, driven by duty. It all feels ancient because it is. Somewhere between the pages of a comic book and the smoke of a distant ritual fire, the two worlds overlap. The hero's journey, the chosen champion, the flawed genius, the fallen prince. These aren't inventions of Hollywood. They're memories. Humans never stopped needing heroes. We just changed their costumes. In the dim quiet of a modern room, someone reads a comic panel lit by a bedside lamp. The hero dodges an enemy, leaps across a rooftop, saves a city. But beneath that glossy drawing lies the same echo that once guided storytellers in dusty desert towns, icy northern forests, crowded Mediterranean ports, and misty river valleys. Strength that protects the weak, cunning that outwits the impossible, a power that must be controlled or mastered. A destiny that arrives whether the hero wants it or not. Even the villains, those towering shadows with impossible ambition, follow patterns laid down long before printing presses existed. Titans rebelling against the gods, tricksters challenging order, chaos rising again and again to test the hero's resolve. The shapes persist, reappearing every time a new story is told. People feel drawn to these patterns, not because they're new, but because they're old, comforting, familiar in a way we can't always name. A reminder that human fears and hopes haven't changed as much as we pretend. Somewhere, a child watches a superhero movie and feels something spark in their chest, courage, or maybe the hope that they too could rise above fear someday. Thousands of years earlier, another child sat beneath a flickering fire listening to a bard describe the deeds of a hero who could wrestle lions, outsmart gods, or travel impossible distances. Different setting, same spark. In this quiet, sleepy moment, it becomes easier to see how smooth the ancient myths slid into modern stories. How gods became aliens. How enchanted weapons became futuristic technology. How divine trials became training montages. The shapes remained the same, only the surface changed, and that brings us gently toward the first figure whose outline stretches boldly across history, the hero of impossible strength, the champion who fights monsters, and the half-divine wanderer whose struggles still echo in today's blockbusters. The world once called him Heracles. We call him something else now. The quiet of the room deepens as the story moves further into the past, to a world lit by torches and echoing with footsteps across stone courtyards. It feels older here, the air heavier, as though everything slows down when the outline of Heracles begins to take form. Somewhere far away, a dog barks once and then falls silent, leaving the story to drift without interruption. Heracles stands at the edge of memory like a figure carved out of dusk, large, broad-shouldered. Wrapped in the thick skin of a lion, he once fought with his bare hands. Ancient storytellers describe him as a man born from two worlds, the mortal world of his mother and the divine realm of his father, Zeus. That dual nature places him of a role no ordinary person can inhabit. He is expected to carry the weight of tasks that others cannot survive, and the stories about him grow into a sequence of labors that define how ancient cultures imagine extraordinary strength. He does not begin as a hero. He begins as a child whose strength surfaces too early, too violently, forcing others to realize that his life will never follow the path of ordinary men. The tales describe him defeating creatures that symbolize chaos and danger, not only because someone asks him to, but because the world around him cannot stay balanced without someone willing to confront these threats directly. His labors appear one after another, each different from the last. Capturing a golden-horned deer, retrieving cattle from a distant island, driving away monstrous birds, or wrestling a giant who grows stronger every time he touches the earth. Every task tests him in a different way, and each becomes a building block for how generations imagine a protector. Heracles' strength is not quiet. Ancient sources describe it as overwhelming, forceful, and at times uncontrollable. There are stories where he acts under a sudden madness, committing actions that weigh heavily on him afterward. This detail stays constant across multiple versions. Power without restraint is dangerous, even when the power belongs to someone meant to protect others. The tension between his strength and the need to contain it becomes one of the oldest patterns in hero storytelling, a pattern still visible in modern characters who struggle with abilities far beyond what anyone around them can understand. His image in ancient art remains consistent. Vase painters show him carrying a wooden club and wearing the impenetrable hide of the Nemean lion, arranged across his shoulders like a mantle. Sculptures emphasize his muscles, his heavy posture, and the quiet intensity in his stance. He rarely appears idle. Even in moments of rest, he looks like someone who could rise and fight again at any second. Over time, this physical form becomes a template for how cultures portray exceptional strength, wide shoulders, powerful arms, a body shaped by trials rather than comfort. Each of his 12 labors unfolds like an episodic story, a structure ancient listeners grew familiar with. A challenge arises. Heracles confronts it. The world briefly regains balance. And then the next trial begins. This rhythm forms the earliest version of the serialized hero narrative. People would gather to hear individual episodes, each complete on its own, yet all contributing to a greater tale. The idea that a hero's life is measured by a sequence of escalating tasks takes root here. Long before printed stories or illustrated panels organize adventures into numbered chapters. The monsters he faces are not merely animals. They symbolize specific fears of ancient life, untamed wilderness, unexplained illnesses, overwhelming storms, or dangerous territories beyond the known world. Each creature he fights reflects something that people could not easily control, a reminder that strength is a necessary force in society. When Heracles succeeds, the world around him becomes safer, even if only briefly. His victories show a pattern found in many heroic narratives. A single individual stands between ordinary people and the chaos that threatens them. Despite his accomplishments, Heracles does not escape suffering. Ancient accounts describe him as wandering, restless, and frequently burdened by the consequences of his actions. His strength isolates him. Few can stand beside someone who regularly confronts threats beyond human scale. This solitude appears often in myth, forming another pattern that will echo for centuries. The hero who saves others, but remains apart from them. Travel defines his life. He crosses lands known and unknown to ancient Greeks, moving through territories that later readers recognize as mythic geography. His journeys span regions that ancient storytellers imagined at the edges of the world, distant islands, deep forests, fierce mountain ranges, and shadowed realms inhabited by beings who challenged the boundary between myth and reality. Through these travels, he becomes less a man and more a symbol of movement between worlds, someone who enters dangerous spaces so that others do not have to. The lion's skin he wears carries symbolic weight. It becomes a permanent reminder of one of his earliest feats and an emblem of protection. The hide is said to be impenetrable, granting Heracles a small piece of the monster's strength. This idea, defeating a creature and wearing its power, reappears in countless hero narratives across cultures. The concept that a hero gains resilience by confronting danger directly remains foundational in storytelling. Heracles' bow and arrows appear frequently in his later stories. The arrows are dipped in poison from the Hydra, another creature he defeated. This detail introduces a complex aspect of his character. His victories can create tools that later become sources of tragedy. Ancient narratives often treat power as double-edged, capable of harm even when intended for protection. This tension between heroic tools and unintended consequences shapes many modern interpretations of strength in storytelling. Ancient worship practices place Heracles in a unique position between hero and god. Some city-states honor him as a divine figure with temples and rituals, while others treat him as a heroic ancestor whose stories exemplify human resilience. This duality reflects how ancient cultures blur the boundaries between mortal achievement and divine influence. The pattern appears again in later traditions, where extraordinary figures exist in a space between human and supernatural. Heracles' death and subsequent transformation into a divine being complete his narrative arc. Stories describe him ascending to join the gods after a life filled with struggle, making him one of the few heroes granted immortality through deeds rather than birth. This motif becomes another structure that later storytellers adopt, a hero who earns a place among higher beings through sacrifice and endurance. As time passes, Heracles' image spreads beyond Greece. Roman authors adopt him under the name Hercules, incorporating him into their own cultural stories. His characteristics remain largely unchanged: unmatched strength, endurance in hardship, and a life defined by trials. Roman art continues to portray him with the lion's skin and club, solidifying a visual consistency that persists for centuries. When modern stories begin borrowing from ancient patterns, Heracles' influence becomes visible almost immediately. The idea of a figure who combines extraordinary strength with moral responsibility becomes a foundational archetype. Heroes who protect cities, confront monsters, or shoulder burdens to heavy for ordinary characters echo Heracles' role in myth. Even the visual language of broad shoulders, clenched fists, and heroic stances resembles the ancient depictions. In the quiet space between ancient firelight and the soft glow of a bedside lamp, Heracles stands as a reminder that the oldest stories shape the newest ones. His strength, trials, and solitude form a pattern that modern heroes still follow. The world changes, but the structure remains. The outline of Heracles fades slowly into the dimness, leaving behind the shape of a story ready to evolve again. And in that fading silhouette, another figure begins to emerge, a modern hero shaped from the same ancient mold, carrying the same weight, built from the same narrative bones. His cape does not hide the connection. It only shifts the color. The story drifts forward again, passing from torchlit courtyards and lion-skinned shadows into a world lit by electric bulbs and neon signs. The air changes slightly, becoming clearer and cooler, carrying the faint hum of city life at night, the distant whisper of cars, the soft whir of a refrigerator, the low buzz of a street lamp outside the window. Yet even in this modern quiet, the outline of a familiar figure begins to take shape, tall and steady, a silhouette against a backdrop of endless sky. He arrives not from myth, but from a printed page that first appeared in 1938, pressed in bright ink on thin pulp paper and sold for a few cents. He stands in a splash of color, red, blue, yellow, drawn by young artists Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, who imagined what a hero might look like in an era of economic hardship and global uncertainty. The first time readers see him, he is lifting a car above his head with ease, the same way a Greek hero once lifted a boulder in an ancient tale. In this quiet moment, the boundary between ancient and modern becomes difficult to see. Superman moves through his earliest stories with a peculiar combination of gentleness and impossible force. He stops runaway trains, rescues people from collapsing bridges, and confronts corrupt officials who exploit the powerless. His actions reflect the concerns of the 1930s: unsafe factories, political manipulation, financial fraud, urban crime. Yet each act follows a pattern already thousands of years old, the strong protector restoring balance to a world that often slips into disorder. His origins set him apart from others. Instead of being born from a god, he arrives from a distant planet destroyed by environmental collapse. His strength comes not from divine blessing, but from the sun of a new world, which gives him abilities unavailable to humans. The structure, however, remains the same: a child from a higher lineage sent into the mortal world, growing up among ordinary people while carrying extraordinary potential. Ancient listeners would have recognized the pattern instantly, even if the details felt unfamiliar. As he grows, he learns restraint. His adoptive parents teach him to hide the full extent of his strength until he understands how to use it responsibly. This echoes earlier stories in which young heroes discover powers that must be controlled, not displayed recklessly. The tension between what he can do and what he chooses to do shapes his character more than the abilities themselves. The persona of Clark Kent appears as a deliberate retreat into ordinariness. He wears glasses, keeps his posture soft, lowers his voice, and moves with care, as though afraid of leaving a dent in the world by accident. Ancient heroes also lived with dual identities, one for the world around them, and one for the moments when danger demanded the full force of their nature. For Superman, the transition between the two becomes a ritual. A shirt opens, a symbol appears, and the quiet man becomes the figure who lifts trains and shatters chains. The S on his chest begins simply as an emblem, a bold shape designed for visibility on early printing presses. Later interpretations adjust its meaning, describing it as a family crest or a sign of hope. Symbols gaining new layers of meaning over time are the way ancient cults adopted emblems that shifted and expanded across centuries. What begins as a design often becomes an idea. His cape moves behind him, or a red comet trail. It echoes the visual language of ancient art where heroes, gods, or sacred figures wear flowing garments that curve dramatically in the wind, granting their silhouettes a sense of motion even in stillness. In printed panels and on film screens, the cape frames his body in a way that makes him appear larger, more present, more mythic. His powers grow with each decade. Early stories show him leaping high rather than flying. Later ones give him the ability to soar across continents. His strength increases, his senses sharpen, his durability expands, until bullets flatten harmlessly against him. These adjustments follow the same evolution found in mythic figures whose capabilities change as storytellers adapt them to new audiences. His enemies form another constellation. Some rely on brute force, challenging him directly with physical strength or destructive power. Others rely on intelligence, using technology or strategy to test him from angles he cannot always anticipate. The pattern resembles ancient myths where heroes confront not only monsters of raw strength, but also adversaries who represent trickery, ambition, or hubris. Among these figures, Lex Luthor stands out, a man without supernatural abilities, yet able to challenge Superman through intellect and resources. The contrast between superhuman strength and human cunning repeats motifs found in stories where divine heroes face rivals who threaten order through bold calculation rather than physical dominance. The city he protects, Metropolis, functions as a modern equivalent of ancient urban centers, watched over by heroic figures. Its skyline rises in gleaming towers, echoing the idealized cities imagined in early literature as places requiring constant protection. The people who live there view Superman with a mixture of awe and dependence similar to how ancient communities look to their heroes or patron gods. In times of crisis, eyes turn upward, toward the sky where he often appears. His posture becomes iconic. Artists portray him standing with shoulders broad, chest lifted, feet planted firmly on the ground, or hovering slightly above it. The pose resembles ancient sculptures that depict heroes in positions of readiness and calm strength. The stillness in these images conveys confidence, assurance, and a promise of protection. The transformation scenes, phone booths, alleyways, rooftop doors, function like miniature thresholds between identities. Many ancient heroes cross similar boundaries, stepping from the everyday world into spaces where their full nature becomes visible. For Superman, these moments emphasize the idea that his heroism is not constant display, but deliberate action chosen in response to need. As decades pass, the narrative surrounding him adapts to new technologies and cultural moments. Radio dramas give him a voice, black and white serials bring him into motion. Color films show him flying across wide skies. Animated series refine his silhouette into clean lines and bright hues. Despite each shift, the underlying structure remains stable. A figure of immense strength rises to confront threats that surpass ordinary capacity. The world changes around him, yet he stays anchored to the same core patterns. His stories explore alienation, responsibility, loss, and the tension between belonging and difference. Themes present in myths where heroes stand both inside and outside the communities they protect. His distant home, Krypton, functions like the unreachable realms described in older narratives, places that shape identity but remain forever out of reach. Even his vulnerability echoes ancient patterns. Where Heracles struggled with madness or imposed labors, Superman faces a weakness tied to his origin, fragments of his lost world that diminish his strength. Kryptonite becomes a modern form of the symbolic weaknesses found throughout mythology, a reminder that even the strongest heroes carry limitations. In the softness of this moment, Superman stands not as a novelty of the 20th century, but as a continuation of a story humans have told for millennia. His flights across the sky resemble the journeys of gods who travel between realms. His battles echo conflicts from ancient epics. His compassion mirrors the idealized duties of legendary protectors. He becomes a bridge, one foot planted in ancient myth, the other in modern imagination. The world once watched Heracles wrestle lions and confront giants. Now it watches Superman lift airplanes and stop collapsing towers. The scale changes, the setting evolves, but the shape remains. Somewhere beneath the hum of the modern night, the old firelight flickers for a moment, as if acknowledging that the hero standing in bright colors is simply the newest reflection of a very old idea. Strength, duty, restraint, and the endless challenge of facing danger for the sake of others. The echoes align quietly across centuries, and as his outline fades softly into the background, another figure begins to emerge, one who does not rely on overwhelming power, but on strategy, wit, and a mind shaped by long journeys through uncertain worlds. The old storytellers called him Odysseus. Modern readers know him by another name. Odysseus appears in early Greek epics as a figure defined not by overwhelming strength, but by strategy, persuasion, and careful planning. In the Iliad and the Odyssey, his actions often determine the direction of events more effectively than brute force ever could. He convinces leaders to stay united, designs ambushes, and makes decisions that alter the course of battles. His defining quality is intelligence used in moments where strength alone would fail. His journey home after the Trojan War stretches across unknown seas and unfamiliar lands, filled with obstacles that rely on his ability to observe, adapt, and speak convincingly. When he encounters the Cyclops, he survives not by fighting, but by introducing a false identity, hiding his name, and manipulating his surroundings. When he reaches Circe, he remains cautious and gains advantage by staying aware of her intentions. In the land of the dead, he follows instructions precisely, speaking to spirits with discipline that keeps him safe. These episodes build a portrait of a hero whose survival depends on his mind more than his weapons. Ancient poets describe him as someone skilled in speeches. He persuades others in assemblies, calms frightened crews, and negotiates dangerous situations with patience rather than force. His words shape outcomes in ways that physical combat cannot. This trait becomes one of the earliest models for the hero, who succeeds through intellect, a pattern that later storytelling repeatedly reuses when presenting figures who plan, anticipate, and outthink their opponents. Odysseus also carries the burden of leadership. His decisions influence the fate of his entire crew, and ancient narratives show him navigating responsibility with moments of both success and failure. Some episodes portray him as cautious and thoughtful. Others show him making choices that lead to loss or delay. This complexity creates a hero who is not defined by perfection, but by the constant effort to solve problems in an unpredictable world. His resourcefulness appears in smaller details as well. Ancient accounts describe him building rafts, disguising himself, constructing shelters, and finding ways to stretch limited supplies. He improvises tools, plans escape routes, and studies his surroundings before acting. These elements contribute to the long-standing archetype of a hero who prepares meticulously, a trait that remains recognizable in modern characters who rely on planning rather than physical power. His return to Ithaca centers on strategy. He disguises himself, gathers information quietly, and chooses the exact moment to reveal his identity. He studies his enemies before confronting them and organizes a coordinated strike with a small group of allies. The emphasis on timing, observation, and preparation establishes a storytelling template for moments where intelligence replaces spectacle. This approach to heroism differs sharply from the figures who dominate through strength alone. Odysseus stands among warriors, but operates with a different set of instincts. He calculates before acting, speaks before fighting, and seeks solutions that minimize unnecessary risk. His presence among the Greeks at Troy shows a complementary dimension of heroism, one where effectiveness comes from insight rather than force. Throughout ancient literature, he remains a figure shaped by travel. His experiences at sea expose him to unknown cultures, dangerous environments, and encounters with beings that exist beyond normal human understanding. These journeys serve as a narrative framework for testing his adaptability. Each new place challenges him to evaluate the situation carefully, altering his plans to match the environment. The challenges he faces emphasize that knowledge can be as powerful as strength. Navigating storms, avoiding enchanted dangers, and identifying deceptions require a hero capable of reading signs and adjusting accordingly. This concept appears repeatedly in ancient sources, creating an enduring association between Odysseus and the idea of strategic intelligence. His influence on modern storytelling becomes clear when examining characters who rely on preparation rather than innate power. Heroes who use detective skills, technological tools, or intricate planning follow a structure that originates in Odysseus' stories. They operate with the same calm precision, gathering information before acting, anticipating opponents' moves, and treating knowledge as their strongest weapon. His combination of leadership, adaptability, and strategic thinking forms a complete heroic shape that persists across centuries. Modern narratives often place a similar figure alongside heroes defined by strength, creating a balanced dynamic where power and intellect work together. This pairing mirrors the ancient contrast between Odysseus and the physically dominant figures of his time. In the context of contemporary superhero stories, the pattern is clear. Characters who lack supernatural strength yet routinely outmaneuver powerful adversaries reflect the same structure. Their entrance comes not from physical superiority, but from the ability to stay composed, think ahead, and exploit every detail available to them. Odysseus remains one of the oldest examples of this kind of hero. His presence in ancient literature demonstrates how early cultures valued intelligence as a form of strength. His stories show that danger can be confronted not only with weapons, but with foresight, persuasion, and the willingness to adapt. This shape of heroism becomes a foundation for modern characters who rely on discipline, planning, and resilience of mind. As those stories unfold, the influence of Odysseus continues quietly beneath their surface, steady and unmistakable, shaping the way audiences understand courage beyond physical power. Batman appears in 1939 in the pages of Detective Comics number 27, created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, as a hero without supernatural abilities who relies entirely on planning, discipline, and intellect. His earliest stories present him moving through dark city streets, examining clues, interpreting evidence, and confronting criminals with a methodical precision that distinguishes him from other emerging comic heroes of the era. His identity is built on preparation, the idea that every threat has a weakness waiting to be uncovered. His origins establish a defining moment, the death of his parents during a robbery. This event shapes his purpose and leads him to spend years training in physical combat, forensic science, escape techniques, and strategic thinking. The pattern resembles the journeys of figures in ancient literature who undergo long periods of preparation before confronting the challenges of the world. His path is not one of inherited power, but of self-directed mastery. The city he protects, Gotham, functions as an urban landscape filled with complex social and criminal structures. Instead of confronting armies or supernatural forces, he navigates corruption, organized crime, and individual adversaries whose intelligence often matches his own. This environment requires constant observation. He moves through it with calculated steps, gathering information in silence, analyzing patterns, and anticipating threats before they fully appear. His tools play a central role in his effectiveness. Early comics describe a utility belt containing devices for climbing, disarming opponents, opening locked spaces, and navigating dangerous environments. These tools are designed with specific situations in mind, reflecting a habit of predicting future obstacles. The emphasis on technological adaptation mirrors the ancient stories, in which heroes craft specialized tools or employ clever methods to overcome challenges that strength alone cannot solve. The persona of Bruce Wayne provides a contrast. As a wealthy public figure, he appears detached from danger, maintaining a calm and polished social presence. This separation between public identity and hidden capability recalls earlier narratives where heroes adopt disguises or alternate roles to conceal their true nature until needed. The distinction allows him to operate with freedom in key investigations, while shielding those around him from the consequences of his work. The Batcave functions as a private space dedicated to preparation. Early descriptions show it filled with equipment, records, maps, and training areas. It serves as a strategic center, where he reviews information, develops solutions, and analyzes patterns in criminal behavior. This deliberate environment resembles ancient accounts of heroes who retreat into secluded spaces to plan their next steps before undertaking dangerous journeys. His adversaries highlight the importance of intellect in his world. The Riddler challenges him through puzzles and symbolic clues requiring careful interpretation. To face forces him to consider dual probabilities and contradictory impulses. Resolvo confronts him with ideological and tactical opposition rooted in long-term planning. These conflicts center on mental contests rather than brute force battles, reinforcing the idea that strategy defines his approach. Detective work becomes one of his primary methods. Early issues portray him examining chemical traces, interpreting footprints, studying bullet trajectories, and evaluating crime scenes. These elements reflect real forensic techniques emerging in the early 20th century. His ability to connect details, form hypotheses, and reach conclusions echoes the traits associated with heroes who rely on intelligence to navigate uncertain and dangerous environments. He maintains strict physical discipline, training in multiple combat techniques. However, his physical skill exists to support his strategy, not replace it. Ancient stories often describe heroes whose strength is enhanced by knowledge of terrain, timing, or the weaknesses of adversaries. Batman follows the same structural pattern. Strength used as a tool within a larger framework of planning. Fear becomes a deliberate instrument. Early comics show him using darkness, silhouette, and symbolism to create psychological pressure on opponents. This method draws on long-standing ideas in storytelling, where heroes manipulate perception to gain advantage. His emblem, the bat, becomes a symbol that unsettles criminals and shapes their expectations before conflict begins. His commitment to restraint forms another key aspect of his character. While he confronts danger directly, he imposes limits on how far he allows violence to go. This control reflects the same tension that appears in ancient heroes who must decide how to wield their abilities without becoming destructive themselves. The boundary between justice and vengeance becomes a recurring theme, shaping his actions and decisions. Gotham's complexity requires constant vigilance. He moves across rooftops, listens to police frequencies, and evaluates shifting alliances among criminal groups. His awareness of the city's structure, its alleys, abandoned buildings, underground passages, and hidden spaces, resembles the familiarity ancient heroes develop with landscapes that define their journeys. His effectiveness depends on understanding his surroundings as intensely as he understands his adversaries. The partnership with allies such as Alfred, Gordon, and later Robin mirrors ancient patterns in which heroes rely on a small circle of trusted companions. These relationships provide information, support, and stability, allowing him to operate effectively in a world filled with unpredictable dangers. Each ally serves a specific role, creating a network of cooperation that strengthens his efforts. Despite his abilities, he remains human. Injuries, fatigue, and personal loss accompany his stories. This vulnerability differentiates him from characters whose strength arises from supernatural origins or extraterrestrial heritage. His entrance reflects a different kind of heroism, the kind rooted in persistence, discipline, and the willingness to face danger repeatedly without the guarantee of triumph. His influence on modern storytelling is extensive. Characters who rely on intelligence, technology, and meticulous preparation follow the model established by his earliest stories. The idea of the strategic hero, one who succeeds because he anticipates what others overlook, echoes the ancient archetype embodied by Odysseus, reshaped for a modern setting. Batman stands as a contemporary expression of a hero defined not by divine strength, but by relentless thought, careful planning, and a mind sharpened by loss and duty. The Norse gods enter the historical record through poems preserved in Iceland, written in the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda, where their traits, fears, strengths, and conflicts take sharply defined form. These texts describe a world structured around cycles of rising order, looming chaos, and the constant threat of destruction. The figures at the center of this world possess immense force, yet remain vulnerable to destiny and time. Their stories create a framework of heroic identity that later cultures reuse when imagining powerful beings who stand against overwhelming forces. Thor appears in these poems as a god associated with thunder, storms, and protection. He carries a hammer named Mjolnir, a weapon forged by dwarves that returns to his hand after being thrown. This detail emphasizes the idea of a signature weapon, unique and irreplaceable, that symbolizes authority. Early depictions show him riding in a chariot pulled by goats, traveling across regions inhabited by giants who seek to disturb the balance of the world. His strength and directness shape his role as the defender of gods and humans, confronting threats through force and steadfast will. Odin stands in contrast. He values knowledge, prophecy, and strategic insight. The poems describe him sacrificing an eye to drink from a well that grants wisdom, placing understanding above physical completeness. He hangs for 9 nights on the world tree, wounded and alone, to gain the knowledge of runes. These stories form a model for a different kind of power, one rooted in sacrifice, intellect, and the ability to navigate hidden truths. Unlike Thor, Odin relies more on foresight than force, shaping events through information and planning. Loki exists within this system as a figure defined by unpredictability. He shifts shapes, disrupts order, and uses deception to influence events. Sometimes he assists the gods, at other moments he causes significant harm. This duality becomes essential to understanding his role. His actions often create the conditions that lead to future conflicts, showing how instability operates within mythic systems. His presence introduces the idea that cleverness, when misaligned with responsibility, can create consequences larger than the initial act. The relationships among these figures reflect an ecosystem of roles, protector, strategist, trickster, that persist in modern storytelling. Each has functions that shape how danger is confronted, opportunity is perceived, and decisions are made. This combination of distinct heroic patterns forms a template later narratives adopt when constructing teams of characters who rely on different strengths. Ragnarok, the prophesied destruction of the world, reveals another dimension of Norse storytelling. The texts describe a final battle, which gods and giants confront each other, leading to widespread destruction. Thor fights the serpent Jormungandr and defeats it, only to fall afterward from its poison. Odin confronts the wolf Fenrir, and is swallowed. Loki confronts Heimdall, and both fall. This cycle represents a world where even powerful figures face limits. The inevitability of failure becomes part of their heroism, showing courage in the face of unavoidable loss. This sense of fragile balance influences many aspects of later heroic narratives. The idea that immense power does not guarantee safety or victory becomes a recurring motif in modern stories. where characters confront threats larger than themselves despite their abilities. The concept that destruction may be part of a larger cycle also appears in narratives that explore themes of renewal and consequence. The Norse gods inhabit a world where magic, weapons, landscapes, and creatures interact continuously. Their enemies include frost giants, serpents, and forces that challenge cosmic order. These elements create a sense of scale that modern stories adopt when portraying battles between superpowered figures and catastrophic threats. The combination of natural forces and personified danger establishes a structure that feels both mythic and expansive. The existence of the Bifrost, a rainbow bridge connecting the world of gods to the world of humans, provides a clear mechanism for movement between realms. This detail introduces the idea that different worlds exist simultaneously, and that powerful beings can travel between them. Modern narratives adopt similar structures, portraying characters who move between dimensions or inhabit regions beyond normal perception. Thor's hammer carries symbolic weight. Its association with protection appears in archaeological findings where miniature replicas were worn as amulets. These objects show how the figure of Thor functioned not only in stories but in lived culture. They reflect the desire for security and strength in uncertain environments. The connection between symbolic weaponry and personal identity becomes a recurring feature in modern depictions of heroes. Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin, represent thought and memory. They travel across the world and return with information. This motif emphasizes surveillance and knowledge gathering, concepts that appear in modern narratives where powerful figures rely on networks of information. The relationship between Odin and his ravens mirrors systems in which leaders depend on distant observation to make strategic decisions. Loki's shifting roles create parallels to characters who blur the boundaries between ally and adversary. His actions remain unpredictable, creating narrative tension through uncertainty. The idea of a figure who challenges the hero, while sometimes supporting them, influences the development of modern characters whose loyalties change over time. The presence of multiple weapons and artifacts also shapes later heroic narratives. Thor's hammer, Odin's spear Gungnir, Freyr's ship Skyblafner, and the ring Drawbler each carry specific abilities. These objects establish the idea that tools with unique properties can define a hero's approach to conflict. Modern stories replicate this structure through specialized equipment that grants advantages or introduces new challenges. The Norse gods' vulnerability to fate forms another essential element. Despite their strength and resources, they cannot escape the forces that determine the world's end. This idea contrasts with mythic systems where gods are invulnerable or immortal. The Norse emphasis on struggle despite inevitability shapes modern narratives that depict powerful characters facing challenges beyond their control. Elements of Norse cosmology, the Nine Realms, the world tree Yggdrasil, and the various beings inhabiting its branches and roots, create a spatial structure that modern stories adapt when constructing interconnected universes. The concept of multiple realms connected through shared pathways becomes foundational in many contemporary fictional worlds. The gods' personalities also influence later character development. Thor's directness, Odin's depth of knowledge, and Loki's cunning each represent traits that appear repeatedly in modern heroic themes. These roles complement each other, creating dynamic interactions that shape the direction of stories. Norse myth preserves moments of everyday detail as well. Descriptions of feasts, drinking halls, and warm fires appear alongside battles and cosmic events. These humanizing elements help shape the gods as figures with emotions, preferences, and flaws. Modern narratives continue this approach by blending extraordinary abilities with personal moments that reveal vulnerability or conflict. The death of Balder, caused by a dart of mistletoe, reveals how even small details can lead to large consequences. The story unfolds through misunderstandings, promises, and the failure of protection. This emphasis on unexpected weaknesses becomes a common theme in modern narratives, where powerful characters possess vulnerabilities that shape their fates. The influence of Norse myths on modern superhero stories becomes unmistakable when examining characters whose power arises from extraordinary sources, whose identities revolve around weaponry, or whose conflicts span multiple realms. The patterns surrounding the gods, their strengths, weaknesses, and relationships, they appear repeatedly in new forms as stories adapt to different times and audiences. These elements show how an ancient system of storytelling continues to shape the language of power, courage, and destiny in modern narratives. The Norse gods remain present not through worship, but through the repeated use of their structures, shaping how audiences understand epic conflict and heroic resilience. Thor enters modern storytelling through Marvel Comics in 1962, created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby. His earliest appearances present him as a direct adaptation of the Norse god of thunder, borrowing the name, the hammer, the symbols, and the essential traits from medieval Icelandic texts. Instead of transforming the figure completely, early writers choose to bring him into a contemporary setting, while preserving the mythological foundation that has existed for centuries. In the comics, Thor's identity connects to worlds. He is a warrior associated with storms, lightning, and powerful blows, echoing the descriptions from the Poetic Edda and Prose Edda, where he protects the realms from giants and other forces that threaten cosmic balance. At the same time, he walks among humans in a modern environment, observing their lives and responding to their dangers with abilities that reflect his ancient role. This dual existence maintains the structure seen in the old poems while adapting it to new narrative needs. The hammer, Mjolnir, remains central. In Norse mythology, it returns to Thor's hand after being thrown, strikes with immense force, and is used for consecrations as well as battle. Marvel adopts these characteristics, adding new functions that suit a superhero story, controlling storms, channeling energy, opening portals, and granting flight. The visual emphasis on the hammer, its short handle, its weight, the distinctive shape, preserves the ancient iconography that appears in archaeological findings where miniature hammer amulets are discovered across Scandinavia. Thor's strength in the original myths is portrayed as unmatched among the gods, frequently emphasized in stories where he confronts giants who symbolize chaos. Modern adaptations keep this trait, presenting Thor as one of the physically strongest figures in the superhero realm. The connection between power and responsibility echoes the original role of a protector who stands between the realms of gods and humans. Asgard in the comics draws heavily from Norse cosmology. While the visual designs change to suit contemporary aesthetics, golden towers, shining halls, and sweeping bridges, the core structure derives from descriptions of the god's realm in Icelandic texts. The Bifrost remains a bridge linking worlds, and its presence in modern stories retains the ancient concept of a pathway between divine and mortal spaces. Even when adaptations modify its appearance, the function reflects the older cosmological framework. The figure of Odin appears as the ruler of Asgard, maintaining his identity as a wise and complex leader. In the medieval sources, he sacrifices greatly to gain knowledge, an eye at the well of wisdom, 9 nights on the world tree, 4 runes. In modern stories, these details continue to shape his characterization. He carries the weight of ancient decisions and possesses knowledge that guides his actions as a ruler and father. His relationship with Thor mirrors the dynamic found in myth, where Odin's authority contrasts with Thor's direct approach to conflict. Loki enters as well, retaining the characteristics of a trickster whose shifting loyalties shape events. Medieval texts describe him as capable of both assisting and harming the gods, using deception, shape-shifting, and cunning. Marvel keeps these traits while expanding them into storylines centered on rivalry, jealousy, and conflicting identities. The tension between Thor and Loki reflects the underlying structure of myth, where the balance between order and disruption remains fragile. The dynamic between Thor, Odin, and Loki forms a narrative core that travels directly from ancient poetry into modern entertainment. The same trio, protector, strategist, and trickster, shapes the movement of stories across centuries. Their interactions influence conflicts, alliances, and the direction of each major storyline, both ancient and modern. Thor's connection to storms persists in every adaptation. In the old poems, he's invoked for protection during travel and weather. In Marvel stories, lightning and thunder follow him, emphasizing his identity as a figure tied to natural forces. This connection symbolizes his role as a defender against threats that overwhelm ordinary strength. The imagery of storms becomes a visual shorthand for his presence, just as it was in medieval storytelling. In the myths, Thor frequently journeys to confront giants. These encounters require direct physical effort, endurance, and resilience. The comics reinterpret giants as various powerful adversaries, extraterrestrial beings, monstrous creatures, or cosmic entities. The structure remains the same. Thor faces opponents whose strength challenges the stability of worlds. The shift from mythic geography to cosmic settings reflects a modern expansion of scale, while preserving the pattern of heroic confrontation. The concept of worthiness attached to the hammer appears in later comic interpretations. This idea does not originate directly from medieval texts, where the hammer belongs to Thor without conditions. However, the modern edition aligns with ancient themes of heroic identity and moral character. The requirement that only those who embody specific virtues can lift the hammer introduces a symbolic element that connects to the idea of honorable action, found in many heroic traditions. Thor's relationship with humans reflects a long-standing theme where divine figures observe or intervene in mortal affairs. In Marvel stories, he learns from human experiences, forming bonds that influence his decisions. This development parallels earlier narratives in which gods engage with humans to test, guide, or protect them. The interaction between divine and mortal perspectives becomes a space where stories explore values, duty, and conflict. The depiction of Thor evolves through changes in comic art, animation, and film. Early illustrations emphasize bold lines and straightforward action. Later adaptations incorporate detailed armor, intricate designs, and visual effects that highlight his connection to storms and cosmic forces. Despite stylistic changes, the core imagery remains recognizable: the hammer, the cape, the broad stance, and the movement that suggests immense force contained within controlled action. In modern cinema, Thor appears as a figure who blends humor, power, and emotional depth. His stories explore themes of exile, leadership, loss, and renewal. These themes parallel ancient motifs, where gods and heroes confront cycles of change, shifting roles, and the consequences of their choices. Even in moments designed for entertainment, the underlying structure reflects the gravitational pull of old stories. The concept of realms, interconnected across a larger cosmology, continues in modern adaptations. This expansion of setting creates opportunities for Thor to face threats that operate on scales far beyond individual battles. The structure reflects the ancient idea of a universe composed of multiple interconnected worlds, a system where gods travel, intervene, and defend against forces that seek to destabilize the whole. Artifacts from Norse myth appear as well. The spear Gungnir, the ship Skyblarfner, and the ring Drawper are incorporated into modern versions, sometimes with altered functions, but recognizable origins. These items connect the narrative to older motifs, where powerful objects influence events and carry symbolic significance. Thor's influence on modern storytelling extends beyond his own stories. The model of a hero with divine origin, immense physical power, a symbolic weapon, and a role as protector shapes the development of many contemporary characters. His presence in Marvel establishes a pattern repeated in countless adaptations across genres. The entrance of this figure shows how ancient myth continues to shape the ways modern audiences understand power, conflict, and duty. Thor remains rooted in centuries-old poems, yet lives comfortably within the bright panels of comics and the wide frames of cinema. The continuity between the old and the new remains visible in every swing of the hammer, every storm that gathers behind him, and every moment when he stands as a barrier between danger and the world he protects. Loki appears in the Norse poems as a figure whose actions shift constantly between assistance and disruption. He moves through the narratives not with the strength of Thor or the wisdom of Odin, but with intelligence sharpened into mischief. His presence introduces uncertainty into the structure of the mythic world, allowing events to unfold in ways that neither gods nor humans can fully predict. This pattern becomes one of the clearest foundations for the modern archetype of the trickster, a figure whose power emerges from insight, manipulation, and the ability to see opportunities that others overlook. The earliest texts portray Loki as bound to the gods through oaths and companionship. He participates in their feasts, accompanies them on journeys, and solves problems that require clever solutions. When the gods struggle to secure a wall around Asgard, Loki negotiates with a giant's builder and later arranges the failure of the contract. When Thor loses his hammer, Loki retrieves it using disguise and strategic deception. These roles emphasize his function as a facilitator, someone who bridges gaps that others cannot cross. Yet these same texts describe him causing significant harm. His actions lead to the death of Balder, a central figure in Norse cosmology. He mocks the gods in the poem Lokasenna, insulting each one in turn until they force him to flee. His children, the wolf Fenrir, the serpent Jarmungandr, and the being Hel, become forces associated with destruction, death, and chaos. These elements create a dual role. Loki is both helper and threat, shaping events in directions that combine advantage and danger. This complexity establishes the structure of a character whose identity cannot be defined by a single trait. Ancient poetry describes him changing form, adopting appearances that suit the moment. He becomes a mare to deceive a giant, a bird to travel swiftly, and a fish to escape capture. These descriptions highlight adaptability as a core feature. Later interpretations in modern storytelling adopt this concept, presenting tricksters as figures who shift roles, manipulate perceptions, and thrive on unpredictability. Marvel Comics introduces Loki in 1949, initially drawing heavily from the Norse sources. Early stories portray him as a god associated with mischief, illusions, and sorcery. His conflicts with Thor follow a pattern rooted in myth. Thor strives to maintain order, while Loki seeks advantage through trickery or ambitious schemes. The tension between them mirrors the dynamic seen in the medieval texts, where these two figures represent opposing approaches to problem solving. As the character evolves, Marvel expands Loki's abilities to fit a broader narrative environment. His powers include creating illusions, manipulating minds, shifting his appearance, and altering physical environments in subtle ways. These abilities modernize the mythic concept of shape-shifting, translating it into a visual and narrative language that suits contemporary audiences. The core idea remains intact. Loki's strength lies in perception, deception, and the capacity to reshape reality through cleverness. His motivations in the comics become more detailed. While the medieval sources offer limited explanation for his actions, modern adaptations explore themes of identity, belonging, and rivalry. Loki grows up in Asgard as an outsider, adopted rather than born into the royal family. This element does not exist in the original myths, but serves to deepen his character in modern storytelling. It reframes his antagonism as part of a broader conflict between heritage and expectation, echoing themes found in many heroic narratives where individuals struggle against the roles assigned to them. Cinema further develops Loki's complexity. His portrayal often emphasizes charisma, intelligence, and emotional depth. He becomes a figure who alternates between ally and adversary, participating in conflicts that reshape entire worlds. His decisions frequently reflect internal conflict, making him one of the most layered interpretations of a mythological character in modern popular culture. This approach aligns with the ancient structure of a trickster whose motives are neither fully predictable nor entirely malicious. Loki's connection to magic becomes a consistent theme. In the medieval poems, he uses knowledge of hidden forces to achieve results impossible through strength. Modern stories reproduce this pattern, allowing him to confront opponents whose abilities surpass his own by manipulating circumstances, bending rules, and exploiting the flaws of his adversaries. These actions reinforce the idea that intelligence can rival or exceed physical force in achieving victory. The relationship between Loki and Thor remains central. Their interactions highlight contrasting strategies. Thor approaches challenges directly, relying on force and courage, while Loki seeks indirect routes. The tension between them forms a story structure built on balance, order and disruption, stability and change, clarity and deception. This dynamic appears in many modern stories that pair characters with opposing methods to explore different approaches to conflict. Loki's influence extends beyond his own narrative. Characters in modern media who rely on trickery, illusions, or psychological manipulation often follow patterns shaped by his myth. Figures who act unpredictably or challenge the expectations of others draw from the same structural foundation. The trickster archetype becomes essential in exploring themes of identity, transformation, and the limits of control. Costume design in modern adaptations emphasizes this duality. Loki's outfit often includes green and gold, colors associated with mischief and ambition, along with curved horns that reflect his mythic origins. The horns appear in medieval art only indirectly, yet have become a recognizable symbol of the character in contemporary portrayals. This visual adaptation demonstrates how modern creators reimagine mythological elements to suit new contexts while retaining symbolic meaning. Loki's role in Ragnarok, the final battle of Norse cosmology, shapes his portrayal in all later adaptations. The medieval texts describe him siding with the forces that bring about the destruction of the gods. This association with inevitable endings gives his character a gravity that modern stories often incorporate, linking him to themes of destiny, downfall, and renewal. Even when interpretations soften his antagonism, the shadow of this mythic role remains present. The use of humor becomes another consistent trait. In both ancient poetry and modern adaptations, Loki disrupts solemnity with sharp wit. He challenges authority by speaking truths others avoid. His humor exposes weaknesses and forces characters to confront uncomfortable realities. This pattern appears in many modern tricksters, whose comedic elements conceal deeper insight. Loki's adaptability allows him to function in a wide range of narratives. He appears in stories about cosmic warfare, political intrigue, family conflict, and personal transformation. His ability to shift between tones and genres mirrors the fluidity of his mythological origins, where he participates in tales ranging from humorous mischief to catastrophic destruction. The entrance of Loki's character demonstrates how ancient trickster figures remain relevant. The themes embedded in his stories, identity, deception, intelligence, instability, continue to resonate across cultures and eras. Modern audiences encounter him in films, television, comics, and literature, often recognizing aspects of themselves or society reflected in his shifting form. The influence of this archetype shapes countless narratives that explore the boundaries between order and chaos. Loki remains central to this lineage, a figure whose ancient roots continue to define modern storytelling about cunning, ambition, and the complicated paths that lie between heroism and villainy. The Amazons appear in ancient Greek literature as a group of warrior women living beyond the borders of the familiar world. They are described in sources such as Herodotus, the Iliad, and various mythological traditions as skilled riders, archers, and fighters who maintain their own societies separate from those of men. Their presence challenges the expectations of ancient narratives, introducing a model of strength and discipline that expands the definition of heroism. In Greek epics, Amazon warriors display abilities equal to the greatest fighters of the age. Penthesilea, one of their queens, arrives at Troy and fights with such precision and prowess that even Achilles recognizes her skill. This moment, preserved in later poetic traditions, reflects ancient admiration for exceptional strength regardless of gender. Her appearance on the battlefield shows that heroic capability is not confined to a single social group. Herodotus places the Amazons near the region of the Black Sea, describing customs that differ greatly from those of Greek society. According to his account, they ride horses, participate in hunting, and train for combat. Their independence and martial focus stand in contrast to the roles expected of women in classical Greece, offering a counter-image that has intrigued later generations. These elements create a foundation for the idea of the warrior woman, a figure who uses discipline, skill, and courage to shape her identity. Archaeological findings from Scythian and Sarmatian burial sites reveal women buried with weapons, armor, and riding equipment. These discoveries suggest that historical warrior women existed among nomadic cultures, providing possible sources for the Amazon stories. The presence of bows, spears, and horse gear in these graves supports the portrayal of women capable of combat and contributes to the mythic image recorded in Greek literature. The combination of myth and archaeological evidence strengthens the concept of a society where women participate actively in warfare. In the ancient accounts, Amazon society appears structured around training and readiness. Their skills with the bow and spear reflect techniques used by mounted archers across the Eurasian steppe. The emphasis on riding aligns with the portrayal of Amazons as fast-moving fighters who excel in open terrain. Their association with speed and precision establishes a heroic type defined not by brute strength but by agility and strategic coordination. The myth of Hippolyta, another Amazon queen, introduces the motif of a powerful figure whose possessions carry symbolic weight. Her girdle, a gift from the god Ares, becomes the focus of one of Heracles' labors. This connection situates the Amazons within the broader network of mythic interactions between gods, heroes, and distant societies. It also highlights the recurring idea of objects that represent authority and must be earned through effort or negotiation. The conflict between the Amazons and Greek heroes often arises from misunderstandings, territorial disputes, or obligations imposed by external forces. Their portrayal as adversaries does not diminish their stature. Instead, it emphasizes their capabilities as fighters who present genuine challenges to renowned warriors. These interactions contribute to the development of a narrative landscape where women hold roles traditionally associated with masculine heroism. The Amazon emphasis on discipline and combat skill forms an early template for modern portrayals of female heroes. Their stories feature figures who train rigorously, participate in warfare, and act according to their own values. These elements influence later narratives that seek to depict women as independent agents capable of confronting danger directly. Their image endures in art, literature, and eventually in modern popular culture. In the 20th century, the concept of the Amazon becomes essential to the creation of new heroic figures. Writers and artists draw from ancient descriptions to construct contemporary representations of powerful women who combine martial skill with moral conviction. The contrast between mythic independence and modern societal expectations creates space for reinterpretation, allowing ancient models to inform new stories about agency and strength. The Amazon association with isolated, matriarchal societies also shapes modern fictional worlds. Their depiction as self-governing groups with distinct customs reflects ancient ideas about distant cultures that operate independently from Greek norms. Modern interpretations adapt these elements, imagining societies built on training, unity, and shared purpose. These portrayals parallel the structured environments described in ancient texts, where discipline and skill from the foundation of identity. The idea of warrior women also appears in numerous historical contexts beyond Greece. Nomadic cultures across the steppe, the kingdoms of Nubia, and various African and Asian societies feature accounts of women who take on military roles. Although not identical to the Amazons of myth, these historical examples contribute to the broader tradition that informs modern representations. They demonstrate that the concept of women as warriors has roots in both myth and lived experience. In visual art, Amazons are often depicted with helmets, spears, shields, and patterned clothing. Greek vase painters show them in dynamic poses, emphasizing movement and precision. Their attire sometimes combines Greek elements with details associated with Eastern cultures, reflecting the idea that they inhabit regions beyond the familiar world. This visual identity reinforces their role as figures who step outside typical societal structures. The legacy of the Amazons in modern culture becomes clear when examining characters who draw from their image. The most notable example appears in the creation of Wonder Woman in 1941 by William Moulton Marston. Her origins connect directly to Amazon mythology. She comes from a society of warrior women, trained in combat, and dedicated to using their skills for peace and protection. The island of the Mycera in her stories mirrors the isolated Amazon homeland of ancient texts. Wonder Woman's abilities reflect Amazon characteristics: mastery of weapons, strategic intelligence, and exceptional physical skill. Her role as a bridge between her society and the modern world parallels the mythic stories where Amazons interact with Greek heroes. She carries symbolic items that echo ancient themes, such as the lasso of truth and bracelets that deflect attacks. These tools represent authority, justice, and restraint, values that align with the disciplined identity of the Amazons. The Amazons in Wonder Woman's world also preserve the ancient structure of training, unity, and shared purpose. Their practices incorporate martial arts, tactical drills, and philosophical instruction. These elements update the ancient portrayal while maintaining its core features. The society functions as a place where strength, wisdom, and cooperation shape identity. Wonder Woman's introduction into popular culture marks the full transformation of the Amazon archetype into modern heroism. She embodies endurance, compassion, and discipline, reflecting both the mythic image and contemporary ideals. Her stories examine themes of belonging, conflict, and justice, echoing the concerns found in ancient narratives where Amazons navigate their own role within a larger world. The persistence of the Amazon archetype across centuries shows how ancient stories influence the portrayal of female strength in modern storytelling. The combination of skill, independence, and moral clarity forms a template that continues to shape narratives about women in heroic roles. These elements remain visible in a wide range of characters, genres, and artistic traditions. The Amazons stand as one of the clearest examples of how mythic figures continue to define modern imagination. Their image bridges the distance between ancient epics and contemporary stories, demonstrating that the idea of a disciplined, capable, and heroic woman has roots far deeper than modern fiction alone. Wonder Woman enters modern storytelling in 1941 through All-Star Comics number 8, created by William Moulton Marston and artist H.G. Peter. Her arrival marks one of the earliest appearances of a female superhero in mainstream comics, and her origin draws directly from the ancient Amazon traditions recorded in Greek literature. Instead of inventing a new mythology, Marston shapes her identity by adapting elements that existed for thousands of years, creating a bridge between classical warrior women and modern heroism. Her homeland, the Mycera, reflects the ancient descriptions of isolated Amazon territories. In Greek sources, Amazons live far from the major cities of Greece, beyond the edges of the familiar world, practicing skills that differ from those of surrounding societies. In Wonder Woman's story, the Mycera becomes an island inhabited by warrior women trained in combat, athletics, and philosophical knowledge. The society operates independently, maintaining traditions rooted in discipline and unity. This structure aligns with the ancient portrayal of a community where women develop their own martial and cultural systems. Diana, who becomes Wonder Woman, grows up immersed in this environment. Her training includes mastery of weapons, physical conditioning, and strategic instruction. In ancient accounts, Amazon warriors practice archery, spear fighting, and mounted combat. Modern stories update these skills through new imagery, emphasizing agility, endurance, and tactical awareness. Diana's childhood mirrors the formation of a warrior in a structured society, shaped by mentors who maintain their culture's values. Her abilities reflect traits found in ancient heroines and classical warriors. She possesses remarkable strength, speed, and resilience, attributes that parallel the exceptional capabilities of mythic figures. Ancient texts describe Amazons as nearly unmatched in skill and courage, and Diana inherits this portrayal in our modern setting. Her identity includes a blend of physical and intellectual training, emphasizing balance between strength and judgment. The symbolic items she carries define her role. The lasso of truth ensures honesty and clarity in encounters. Its function resembles ancient tools associated with justice and authority, which bind individuals to truth or compel the revelation of hidden knowledge. Her bracelets, capable of deflecting projectiles, resemble protective gear worn by ancient warriors. In some adaptations, they represent a reminder of past conflicts, echoing how mythic objects often carry memory and meaning. These items establish her visual identity and link her modern portrayal to older traditions, where objects hold symbolic power. Diana's mission connects the Mythera to the outside world. In Greek sources, Amazons occasionally interact with Greek heroes when conditions force them beyond their homeland. Wonder Woman follows a similar pattern. She leaves her community to assist a world facing conflict and uncertainty. This narrative structure maintains the ancient theme, where an Amazon figure steps into a broader stage to confront challenges that affect many nations, rather than only her own people. Her first appearance occurs during a period shaped by global conflict. The early 1940s see widespread concerns regarding war, justice, and the roles individuals play in confronting danger. Wonder Woman's stories emphasize compassion, equality, and the protection of the vulnerable, aligning her identity with ideals explored in ancient narratives about justice and heroic responsibility. Her introduction provides a counterpart to male heroes of the era, presenting a figure whose strength supports a message centered on peace and fairness. Her creators draw from additional influences as well. William Moulton Marston, a psychologist, incorporates ideas related to truthfulness, emotional intelligence, and ethical conduct into her character. These values complement the ancient themes found in Amazon narratives, where discipline, loyalty, and clarity of purpose shape a warrior's identity. The combination of mythic tradition and modern thought gives Wonder Woman a distinctive position among early comic heroes. The island of the Mythera reflects ancient ideas about utopian societies. Sources describing Amazon communities portray them as places of harmony, unity, and shared purpose. Modern adaptations expand this portrayal, showing a society built on mutual respect, advanced knowledge, and the absence of external oppression. The island becomes a setting where ideals are practiced and preserved, similar to how ancient accounts describe regions beyond the borders of known civilizations as places of mystery or unique social structures. Wonder Woman's role in modern storytelling highlights the continuity between ancient and contemporary heroic archetypes. Characters who embody moral clarity, disciplined strength, and compassion often draw from ancient models of leadership and responsibility. Her stories show how these values persist in new narratives that address modern concerns about justice, conflict, and individual action. Her connections to mythology deepen in later retellings. Some versions present her as a figure shaped by the gods, receiving blessings or abilities from divine sources. This structure parallels ancient tales where heroes are aided by gods or possess lineage that connects them to higher powers. The presence of deities such as Athena, Artemis, or Aphrodite in her backstory emphasizes the continuity between Greek myth and her modern identity. The costume design used in early comics incorporates stars and an eagle symbol, reflecting influences from American iconography. Later adaptations adjust the materials, shapes, and details, emphasizing armor-like features that resemble ancient warrior attire. The shift toward more historically grounded designs mirrors an increasing interest in connecting her appearance to the traditions that inspired her origin. These changes highlight the interplay between ancient inspiration and modern reinterpretation. In film adaptations, Wonder Woman emerges as a figure who combines strength with empathy. Scenes depicting her crossing battlefields, negotiating peace, or confronting injustice reflect ancient narratives where heroines intervene in conflicts with clarity and resolve. Her portrayal emphasizes courage not only in combat, but also in moral judgment. This dual aspect aligns with the broader tradition of heroic figures who balance physical capability with wisdom. Her interactions with modern society often highlight the contrast between the mysterious values and contemporary norms. This tension reflects ancient stories in which Amazons encounter societies with different structures and beliefs. These interactions allow exploration of themes such as cultural identity, responsibility, and adaptation, showing how a character rooted in ancient myth can address modern questions. Wonder Woman's impact on popular culture demonstrates the lasting influence of the Amazon archetype. She becomes a central figure in discussions about representation, strength, and the role of women in heroic narratives. Her presence encourages new stories that explore female leadership, agency, and resilience. These themes mirror ancient accounts, where Amazons act with independence, courage, and strategic ability. Her portrayal across comics, animation, and film maintains a consistent focus on justice. This emphasis connects her to ancient heroic ideals, where figures fight to restore balance, protect communities, and uphold shared values. Her actions reflect a tradition that values decisive intervention when danger threatens others. Wonder Woman stands as a modern interpretation of the ancient Amazon, carrying forward traditions of discipline, strength, and moral clarity. Her identity shows how ancient myths continue to shape the language of heroism, offering models that remain relevant across cultures and eras. Through her, the image of the warrior woman persists not only as a symbol of power, but as a guide for understanding courage in its many forms. Hercules enters ancient Greek myth as a figure defined by immense strength, relentless endurance, and the capacity to perform extraordinary feats beyond the abilities of ordinary humans. His identity forms one of the earliest and most influential templates for the concept of the superpowered hero. In the labors of Heracles, preserved through literary and artistic traditions, his story centers on tasks that require not only force, but determination, problem-solving, and the willingness to confront dangers that threaten entire communities. His origins establish a connection to divine power. He is the son of Zeus and a mortal woman, Alcmene, which places him in a category shared by many ancient heroes, individuals who bridge the mortal and divine realms. This dual nature influences his life, granting him exceptional physical ability while exposing him to challenges shaped by divine conflicts. Hera, antagonistic toward him because of Zeus's actions, becomes a source of hardship that shapes many events in his story. This dynamic introduces the theme of a hero navigating forces beyond human control. The 12 labors serve as the central narrative structure for Hercules. They include slaying the Nemean lion, capturing the Erymanthian boar, cleaning the Augean stables, and retrieving the apples of the Hesperides. These tasks vary widely in nature, requiring not only strength but ingenuity. In the labor involving the stables, he diverts rivers to wash away years of accumulated filth, demonstrating that clever solutions are as valuable as physical power. This aspect of his story becomes important in shaping the modern concept of a hero who relies on multiple skills. His portrayal in ancient art emphasizes muscular form, often showing him holding a club or wearing the lion's skin. These symbols become markers of his identity, appearing on vases, mosaics, coins, and sculpture. The club represents raw force and survival in difficult terrain, while the lion's skin symbolizes victory over a powerful opponent. These visual elements help create a consistent iconography that informs later interpretations across centuries. Hercules appears in tragedies, philosophical texts, and epics. His life is marked by periods of wandering, service, and conflict. He participates in battles, assists communities, and confronts monsters that threaten stability. These patterns expand his role beyond isolated feats, presenting him as a figure who intervenes whenever danger exceeds human ability to manage. His actions reflect a broader heroic responsibility that becomes central to later storytelling traditions. The concept of extraordinary strength remains the defining feature of Hercules. Ancient writers describe him bending metal, lifting massive objects, and overpowering creatures that combine animalistic and supernatural traits. This emphasis on power establishes a direct lineage to modern characters who possess enhanced physical capabilities. The idea that strength can serve as a means to restore order, face overwhelming threats, or protect others originates clearly in narratives surrounding Hercules. As Greek culture interacts with Rome, Hercules transforms into Heracles in Roman tradition, retaining his essential characteristics while taking on additional symbolic roles. He becomes associated with civic virtues, protection, and endurance. Roman authors highlight his capacity to withstand suffering and persist through challenges. This adaptation strengthens the idea that superhuman ability includes not only physical strength, but resilience in the face of adversity. Hercules enters early modern literature, theatre, and visual art as a model of heroic imagery. Renaissance artists depict him in grand compositions, using his form to represent courage, moral struggle, and the potential of human achievement. Philosophers reference him as an example of choosing virtue over ease, emphasizing the symbolic meaning of his labors. These interpretations show how ancient heroism continues to shape ideas about character and responsibility. In the 20th century, Hercules becomes an early influence on comic book superheroes. Writers and creators draw from his characteristics when designing figures with extraordinary strength and moral purpose. Characters such as Superman reflect a combination of divine origin, exceptional physical power, and the responsibility to protect weaker communities. Although modern stories develop independently, the structural relationship remains visible. The hero who stands apart through ability acts to serve others. Hercules himself appears in comics, including Marvel's interpretation introduced in 1965. He enters as a character who retains the traits and symbols of ancient myth while participating in modern adventures. His portrayal emphasizes strength, bravery, and a confident personality shaped by centuries-old stories. His interactions with other heroes highlight the blending of mythic tradition with contemporary narrative environments. The idea of superhuman strength continues to evolve through the template established by Hercules. Modern characters who display immense power often confront challenges that test not only their abilities, but their judgment. This pattern mirrors the ancient stories, where Hercules must navigate complex situations shaped by divine influence, personal error, and external threats. Strength becomes a tool that requires guidance, restraint, and wisdom. Hercules' narrative includes moments of weakness, anger, and regret. These elements highlight his human side and introduce consequences that shape his development. Ancient authors include episodes where he acts impulsively or falls under external influence, leading to suffering or further challenges. These moments create a layered portrayal that acknowledges the difficulties of controlling great power. Modern superheroes frequently inherit this pattern, exploring themes of responsibility, identity, and moral choice. The end of Hercules' life features transformation. According to myth, he ascends to the status of a god after completing his earthly trials. This transition reflects the ancient belief that exceptional individuals may transcend mortal boundaries. The idea of transformation influences later stories where heroes evolve, gain new abilities, or take on higher roles. The cycle of trial, suffering, victory, and elevation creates a narrative structure repeated throughout modern heroic fiction. Hercules remains a prominent figure in popular culture. Films, television series, video games, and literature reinterpret his image for new audiences. His representation varies, sometimes humorous, sometimes serious, sometimes contemporary, sometimes faithful to the ancient texts. Yet the core identity remains: strength combined with purpose, endurance combined with responsibility, and action shaped by the need to confront forces beyond ordinary capability. His role as a cultural ancestor to modern superhero narratives becomes clear when examining how strength is used in stories today. The concept of the physically powerful hero who exists to protect, restore balance, or confront extraordinary threats traces its origins to the labors of Hercules. The emphasis on symbolic objects, recognizable costumes, and signature abilities also finds precedent in his lion skin, club, and consistent portrayal across artistic mediums. The entrance of Hercules as a narrative figure demonstrates how ancient stories continue to define the possibilities of modern heroism. The patterns established in his myth, the struggle against overwhelming odds, the search for redemption, the demonstration of extraordinary ability, remain central to contemporary storytelling, whether appearing directly in modern media or indirectly through characters shaped by his legacy. Hercules persists as one of the foundational models of the superpowered hero. Achilles appears in Homer's Iliad as one of the most formidable warriors in Greek epic tradition, defined by speed, precision, and a level of skill on the battlefield unmatched by any other figure in the poem. His presence shapes the rhythm of the story, influencing decisions made by kings, commanders, and armies. The ancient portrayal of Achilles becomes one of the earliest and clearest foundations for the modern archetype of the nearly invulnerable hero, a character whose exceptional abilities place him at the center of conflict while simultaneously isolating him from others. His origins establish a connection to divine ancestry. He is the son of the sea goddess Thetis and the mortal hero Peleus, which grants him extraordinary physical capabilities and a destiny shaped by the interactions between gods and humans. Ancient narratives describe Thetis attempting to protect him from harm during infancy. One tradition describes her dipping him into the river Styx, giving him near invulnerability except for the heel by which she holds him. Although this detail does not appear in Homer, it becomes part of later Greek and Roman interpretations and influences countless modern depictions of vulnerable points in otherwise powerful heroes. Achilles grows up under the guidance of Chiron, the centaur known for teaching medicine, music, and martial arts. This detail highlights the combination of physical power and disciplined training that forms the core of heroic identity in ancient literature. Even the strongest figures must learn technique, judgment, and skill, emphasizing that excellence arises from preparation as well as innate ability. This pattern becomes foundational for many modern heroes who train under mentors to refine their powers. His depiction on the battlefield emphasizes speed. Ancient poets describe him running with such swiftness that he overtakes chariots, moves through crowds of soldiers as though they are obstacles in a narrow path, and closes distances before opponents can react. Speed becomes a signature trait, reflecting a style of combat defined not only by force, but by sudden, decisive motion. This characteristic influences later portrayals of heroes, whose quickness or agility becomes their defining attribute. Achilles' armor plays a central role in his identity. Crafted by the god Hephaestus at the request of Thetis, the shield and breastplate appear in the Iliad as objects of remarkable beauty and symbolic significance. Homer dedicates extensive description to the images engraved on the shield, representing the world in motion, cities, battles, harvests, celebrations, and stars. The presence of divine craftsmanship in his equipment reinforces the idea that the hero's power arises from both personal ability and support from higher forces. Modern superhero designs often follow this structure, where iconic armor or symbols reflect deeper themes. His involvement in the Trojan War begins with a sense of duty, but becomes overshadowed by conflict with Agamemnon, the commander of the Greek forces. When Agamemnon seizes a captive woman awarded to Achilles as a prize of honor, Achilles withdraws from the battlefield. This refusal cripples the Greek army, revealing the extent to which their success depends on him. The moment emphasizes a recurring theme in heroic narratives. Exceptional individuals often hold influence that extends beyond their immediate actions. The gods take active interest in Achilles' fate. Athena restrains him from attacking Agamemnon, Hera advocates for him, and Zeus weighs his destiny against broader cosmic concerns. Their involvement shows how divine forces shape heroic lives, adding a level of complexity to Achilles' role. Modern stories frequently adopt similar structures, where heroes' abilities or destinies intersect with higher powers, cosmic forces, or advanced technologies that operate beyond human control. The death of Patroclus becomes a turning point. Patroclus, wearing Achilles' armor, enters the battle and is killed by Hector, the Trojan prince. This event draws Achilles back into the conflict with intense determination. His grief becomes a source of renewed strength, and his return to the battlefield changes the momentum of the war. Ancient authors use this moment to explore the emotional depth of the hero, showing how loss influences decisions and actions. Modern portrayals of heroes often echo this motif, where personal tragedy intensifies resolve. His confrontation with Hector forms one of the central scenes of the Iliad. Achilles pursues Hector around the walls of Troy, ultimately defeating him in single combat. This moment emphasizes precision, endurance, and the culmination of skill acquired through years of training. It also highlights the tension between honor and vengeance that shapes Achilles' character. The victory becomes inseparable from grief, reflecting the complex emotions associated with heroic action. The vulnerability of Achilles remains a defining motif. Although nearly invincible in battle, he carries a single point of weakness. Ancient sources differ in explaining this detail, but the concept becomes influential in later storytelling. Modern characters with overwhelming strength often possess an internal or external vulnerability that prevents them from becoming unstoppable. This structure reinforces narrative balance and creates opportunities for conflict. The death of Achilles arises from this vulnerability. A poison arrow, guided by Apollo, strikes his heel, leading to his fall. This event concludes his earthly story, but does not diminish his status. Ancient authors describe him receiving heroic honors after death, with some traditions suggesting continued existence in the Isles of the Blessed. His narrative emphasizes the idea that even the greatest heroes remain subject to fate, a theme that shapes numerous modern portrayals of characters who, despite extraordinary abilities, face limits imposed by destiny or circumstance. Achilles' influence reaches far beyond ancient literature. Medieval and Renaissance authors reinterpret his character in various forms, emphasizing different aspects of his identity, sometimes focusing on his prowess, sometimes on his emotional complexity, and sometimes on the tragic nature of his story. His image appears in art, sculpture, and poetry, often symbolizing the pinnacle of physical ability, combined with the fragility inherent in human nature. In modern superhero narratives, Achilles serves as one of the clearest prototypes for characters who blend extraordinary strength with emotional depth. Figures such as Superman, Captain America, and other heroes embody similar features: enhanced physical capability, symbolic armor or costumes, vulnerability that shapes narrative tension, and emotional stories that influence their choices. The combination of power and humanity originates in part from Achilles' portrayal. His legacy also influences military and athletic imagery. The metaphor of the Achilles heel becomes a universal expression for a single point of weakness. The idea of the Achilles tendon reflects the anatomical term derived from the myth. These linguistic traces show how deeply the narrative has embedded itself in cultural consciousness. Achilles remains one of the most enduring figures in the heroic tradition. His story demonstrates how exceptional strength, emotional intensity, divine influence, and vulnerability combine to create a complex and influential character. The patterns established in his myth continue to shape modern storytelling, offering a model for understanding power, destiny, and the human experience at the edge of capability. Odysseus appears in Homer's Odyssey and Iliad as a figure defined not by overwhelming strength, but by sharp intelligence, careful planning, and the ability to navigate danger through thought rather than force. His presence in ancient literature establishes one of the earliest and most influential models for the strategic hero, a character who wins battles, escapes traps, and influences events through reasoning, adaptability, and observation. This pattern becomes essential for many modern fictional heroes, whose success depends on intellect more than physical dominance. In the Iliad, Odysseus demonstrates the ability to persuade, negotiate, and mediate among the Greek leaders. He speaks with clarity and calm authority, guiding decisions during moments of tension. His diplomatic skills form part of his heroic identity, complementing his contributions on the battlefield. Ancient authors portray him as a figure who understands not only warfare, but the structure of alliances, the psychology of leaders, and the consequences of poorly timed actions. This combination of insight and communication becomes a defining feature of the strategic hero. The story most associated with Odysseus, the Trojan horse, reflects his capacity for complex planning. Ancient sources describe him organizing the construction of the wooden structure, coordinating the selection of soldiers, and timing the deception to align with the Trojans' expectations. This episode highlights intelligence as a decisive force capable of ending a 10-year war. It becomes one of the clearest examples in ancient literature where strategy, rather than strength, determines the outcome of major events. Later storytelling traditions use this model when constructing characters who solve large-scale problems through unconventional thinking. The Odyssey presents Odysseus navigating challenges that require adaptability. His encounters with the Cyclops, the Sirens, Circe, Scylla, Charybdis, and other hazards emphasize the role of observation and preparation. Against the Cyclops, he uses anonymity, deception, and timing to escape confinement. Against the Sirens, he employs self-restraint and planning, having his crew block their ears and tying himself to the mast. Against Circe, he survives through negotiation and divine assistance, relying on Hermes' advice and a protective herb. These episodes demonstrate the versatility that defines his heroism. His identity includes a talent for disguise. Ancient texts describe him concealing his appearance when returning to Ithaca, allowing him to gather information before confronting the suitors. This ability to adapt outward identity to circumstances becomes a recurring motif in hero narratives. Modern characters who use disguises, alternate personas, or covert identities follow the structure developed in stories about Odysseus. The role of entrance appears strongly in the Odyssey. Odysseus spends years at sea, facing storms, shipwrecks, and isolation. Ancient authors emphasize his capacity to withstand hardship, hunger, and loss, while maintaining focus on the goal of returning home. This portrayal influences later heroic figures who experience long journeys shaped by perseverance rather than strength alone. Endurance becomes a key component of strategic heroism, highlighting the mental dimension of survival. The gods play a significant role in Odysseus' journey. Athena offers guidance, protection, and support, often appearing in disguise to assist him. Poseidon, angered by Odysseus' actions against the Cyclops, hinders his return with storms and obstacles. The interplay between divine aid and divine opposition shapes Odysseus' fate, illustrating the ancient belief that even the most capable heroes remain subject to forces beyond their control. Modern narratives often adapt this structure through institutions, technologies, or larger cosmic systems that influence a hero's path. Odysseus' encounters with different cultures provide insight into ancient ideas about society. The Odyssey describes the Cyclopes as lacking agriculture, laws, and organized communities. The Phaeacians, by contrast, demonstrate hospitality, advanced seamanship, and structured governance. These contrasts allow the story to explore themes of civilization, leadership, and social order. Odysseus navigates each environment by observing customs and adjusting his approach. This attention to context becomes another trait inherited by modern strategic heroes who adapt to the rules of each new situation. His relationship with Penelope highlights themes of loyalty and patience. While Odysseus endures dangers abroad, Penelope maintains her household despite continuous pressure from the suitors. Their reunion marks the completion of a journey shaped by mutual endurance. Ancient narratives use this structure to emphasize stability as an essential component of heroic identity. Modern stories often adapt similar dynamics, exploring how relationships influence a hero's actions and provide grounding during long periods of conflict. Odysseus' return to Ithaca requires careful planning. He gathers information, evaluates allies, and selects the moment to act. His victory over the suitors depends on positioning, coordination, and timing. This sequence demonstrates the importance of tactical preparation as a heroic skill. It also reinforces the broader theme that intelligence allows heroes to confront challenges that cannot be solved through force alone. Adaptations across history present Odysseus in different lights. Classical authors emphasize his cunning, sometimes framing it as admirable, sometimes portraying it as morally ambiguous. In tragedies, he appears as a persuasive figure whose words carry weight, but whose methods raise ethical questions. This complexity becomes part of his legacy, allowing modern stories to explore moral boundaries associated with strategy, deception, and survival. Modern fiction frequently draws from the Odyssean model when depicting heroes who rely on intellect. Characters who plan multi-step solutions, outwit powerful enemies, or use disguises reflect patterns established in ancient epic. The trope of the master strategist owes much to Odysseus' portrayal in Greek literature. Figures like Sherlock Holmes, Batman, and other investigative or tactical heroes follow this lineage, using observation and reasoning to shape outcomes. The journey structure of the Odyssey influences countless narratives involving travel, peril, and return. Stories about heroes navigating unknown worlds, encountering diverse societies, or confronting unusual creatures often draw from the episodic nature of Odysseus' voyage. The emphasis on learning through experience becomes central to tales of personal development and transformation. Odysseus' story addresses themes such as identity, leadership, and resilience. His frequent use of false names and disguises explores how identity shifts depending on circumstance. His leadership appears inconsistent, but ultimately effective, guiding his crew through numerous dangers until external forces reduce their numbers. The final stages of his journey highlight personal resilience, showing how determination supports strategic thinking even in extreme situations. The enduring influence of Odysseus demonstrates how ancient models continue to guide the portrayal of intelligence in modern heroism. His actions show that strategy, adaptability, and observation can overcome dangers that brute strength cannot address. This foundation shapes many contemporary narratives that emphasize planning, insight, and psychological understanding as essential heroic traits. Odysseus stands as one of the clearest examples of the strategic hero archetype. His story illustrates how intelligence can define heroism, how endurance supports achievement, and how the ability to adapt holds as much power as physical ability. These themes continue to inform modern storytelling across genres, revealing the lasting impact of his ancient narrative. Gilgamesh appears in the ancient Mesopotamian Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest surviving works of literature. Dating to the early 2nd millennium BCE, his story predates Greek epic, Roman legend, and many of the mythic traditions that later shaped global storytelling. As the king of Uruk, a city known for its massive walls and advanced administration, Gilgamesh begins his narrative as a powerful but flawed ruler. His journey explores themes of strength, friendship, loss, and the search for meaning, forming one of the earliest examples of the heroic arc that continues to influence modern narratives. His identity combines human and divine elements. The text describes him as 2/3 divine and 1/3 mortal, a composition that grants him exceptional physical ability, but also ties him to human limitations. This mixture allows the epic to explore the tension between power and vulnerability, highlighting the internal struggles that define many heroic characters. Modern stories about heroes who grapple with extraordinary abilities often trace their lineage to this foundational structure. The city of Uruk serves as the backdrop for his early actions. The epic describes its monumental architecture, including massive walls and temples dedicated to gods such as Anu and Ishtar. As king, Gilgamesh participates in rituals, governance, and construction projects, reflecting the administrative complexity of early Mesopotamian cities. These details provide historical insights into urban life in the ancient Near East, while also grounding the hero of a recognizable environment shaped by both political authority and religious responsibility. The creation of Enkidu forms a pivotal moment in the narrative. The gods shape Enkidu from clay to serve as a balance to Gilgamesh's unchecked power. Enkidu initially lives among animals, embodying natural strength and innocence. His introduction reflects the ancient belief that divine forces maintain equilibrium by intervening when rulers exceed their bounds. The meeting between Gilgamesh and Enkidu leads to mutual respect and deep friendship, forming one of the earliest literary portrayals of a bond between companions who influence each other's growth. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu undertake quests that test their abilities and courage. They travel to the cedar forest to confront the guardian Humbaba, a figure associated with danger and the wild. The gods placed Humbaba there to protect sacred resources, and Gilgamesh's decision to challenge him reflects the heroic desire to achieve greatness through risky endeavors. Their victory demonstrates cooperation, planning, and endurance, but it also raises questions about the consequences of disrupting divine order. The slaying of the Bull of Heaven marks another significant event. Ishtar sends the bull to punish Gilgamesh, but he rejects her advances. The destruction caused by the bull highlights the connection between divine forces and natural calamities. Gilgamesh and Enkidu defeat the bull, demonstrating their combined strength. However, this act deepens the gods' displeasure, leading to Enkidu's fate. The tension between human ambition and divine authority becomes a central theme in the epic. Enkidu's illness and death introduce an emotional shift in Gilgamesh's story. The epic describes his grief in vivid terms, showing his sorrow, fear, and confusion as he confronts the reality of mortality. This moment transforms him from a ruler focused on strength into a figure searching for understanding. His grief becomes the catalyst for a journey that moves beyond physical challenges into philosophical territory. The quest for immortality defines the second half of the epic. Gilgamesh travels across dangerous landscapes, mountains, deserts, and legendary regions, seeking Utnapishtim, a figure who survived a great flood and received eternal life from the gods. The flood narrative in the epic parallels later stories found in other ancient traditions, demonstrating the wide cultural reach of such motifs. Gilgamesh's journey brings him into contact with divine beings, mythical creatures, and symbolic obstacles. When he reaches Utnapishtim, he hears the story of the flood, which includes details about divine decision-making, human survival, and the granting of immortality. The tale provides context for the world's moral and cosmic structure. Utnapishtim tests Gilgamesh's ability to remain awake for extended periods, demonstrating that immortality requires qualities beyond physical strength. Gilgamesh fails the test, highlighting the limits of his capabilities and reinforcing the epic's exploration of human vulnerability. Utnapishtim eventually reveals a plant that can restore youth. Gilgamesh retrieves it, but loses it to a serpent while bathing. This moment symbolizes the fragility of human achievement and the inevitability of loss. The serpent gaining the plant connects to broader, ancient symbolism, where serpents represent renewal and the shedding of old skin. The motif appears in many cultures and reinforces the epic theme that human attempts to escape mortality remain incomplete. Gilgamesh returns to Uruk with a new understanding of his role and limitations. The epic ends with him observing the city's impressive walls, recognizing that his legacy lies not in escaping death, but in shaping a stable and enduring society. This conclusion emphasizes the importance of civic contributions, leadership, and wisdom over heroic feats alone. Many modern hero narratives adopt a similar structure, where personal growth informs a character's final realization. The Epic of Gilgamesh influences later literature through its exploration of friendship, grief, and the search for meaning. These themes appear in countless heroic stories across cultures. The relationship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu serves as a model for companion narratives, where partners balance each other's strengths and weaknesses. The quest for understanding mortality appears in philosophical and literary works that examine the human condition. Modern interpretations draw parallels between Gilgamesh and contemporary heroes who confront internal struggles alongside external threats. Characters who seek knowledge, wrestle with loss, or question their purpose reflect patterns established in the ancient epic. The emphasis on personal transformation through hardship becomes a central element of heroic storytelling across genres, from fantasy to science fiction to historical fiction. The epic also provides insights into ancient Mesopotamian beliefs. It reveals how people understood kingship, divine authority, and the afterlife. These cultural details enrich the narrative and offer a foundation for understanding how early civilizations imagined the relationship between gods and humans. The structure of the story, beginning with strength, moving through companionship, confronting grief, and ending with wisdom, remains one of the most enduring templates for the hero's journey. Gilgamesh stands as one of the earliest examples of a hero whose story explores both external achievements and internal transformation. His journey establishes patterns that appear in countless later works: the rise of a flawed leader, the influence of a companion, the confrontation with loss, the search for understanding, and the acceptance of human limits. These elements continue to define modern heroism, demonstrating how ancient narratives shape contemporary ideas about strength, meaning, and the human experience. Superman enters modern storytelling in 1938 through Action Comics #1, created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. His arrival marks a turning point in the evolution of the hero, blending elements from ancient myth, immigrant experience, scientific imagination, and moral philosophy into a single figure who becomes the foundation of the modern superhero genre. His story draws from patterns established by earlier myths: divine ancestry, extraordinary ability, moral tests, and symbolic transformation, while adapting these elements for a 20th century audience shaped by rapid technological change and global uncertainty. His origins present a clear parallel to ancient narratives about children with extraordinary destinies. Superman is born on Krypton, a world possessing advanced knowledge and powerful natural forces. His parents send him away in an escape vessel as the planet collapses, echoing earlier stories where infants destined for greatness are carried across dangerous terrain or placed in protective vessels to survive destruction. The theme appears in the stories of Moses, Sargon of Akkad, and other ancient figures. In Superman's case, the vessel becomes a spacecraft, reflecting the technological imagination of the era while preserving the symbolic structure of a hero rescued for a greater purpose. Upon arriving on Earth, he is raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent in rural Kansas. Ancient myths frequently include heroes raised by adoptive families who teach humility, restraint, and moral clarity. The Kent family fulfills this role, providing guidance that shapes Superman's character. Their emphasis on responsibility, kindness, and careful use of strength mirrors the lessons taught by mentors in Greek, Roman, and Mesopotamian stories. The rural environment symbolizes stability and grounding, reinforcing the idea that moral foundation precedes heroic action. Superman's abilities derive from his Kryptonian physiology interacting with Earth's environment. Enhanced strength, flight, extraordinary speed, and heightened senses place him in a category resembling ancient demigods. His invulnerability parallels figures such as Achilles or heroes blessed with divine protection. The combination of power and restraint reflects a long-standing heroic tradition in which extraordinary ability must be balanced by ethical judgment. Writers portray Superman as conscious of the impact of his strength, choosing precision and care over forceful dominance. His costume and emblem establish one of the most recognizable symbolic identities in modern culture. The S-shield represents his Kryptonian family, but also evolves into a global icon associated with hope, justice, and protection. This parallels ancient symbols that represent households, divine blessing, or heroic lineage. The bright colors reflect optimism and clarity, distinguishing him visually in ways similar to how ancient heroes were often depicted wearing distinctive attire or carrying recognizable weapons. Clark Kent, his human persona, provides a contrast that enriches the narrative. Ancient heroes sometimes adopt disguises to move unnoticed or interact with ordinary people. Superman's use of a mild-mannered identity allows him to observe society without exerting influence through his abilities. This duality explores themes of belonging and identity, reflecting concerns shared by figures such as Odysseus, who shifts between appearances depending on circumstance, or Gilgamesh, who learns to balance extraordinary capability with human experience. Metropolis serves as a modern counterpart to ancient urban centers where heroes confront threats that exceed the capacity of ordinary citizens. The city's scale, architecture, and complexity create opportunities for Superman to demonstrate his abilities, while also highlighting the fragility of human society. Ancient stories often place heroes in settings threatened by monsters, natural forces, or political instability. Modern adaptations translate these dangers into technological accidents, criminal activity, or large-scale disasters. Superman's adversaries reflect themes found in earlier mythic traditions. Lex Luthor emphasizes intelligence, ambition, and the dangers of unchecked power. His reliance on technology, rather than physical strength, mirrors challenges seen in stories where clever or manipulative figures threaten heroes through strategy rather than might. Villains such as General Zod embody the theme of conflict between individuals who share similar origins but hold opposing values. This dynamic parallels ancient stories about rival heroes or divine beings whose disagreements shape the fate of worlds. The concept of vulnerability remains essential to Superman's narrative. Kryptonite, a fragment of his destroyed homeworld, weakens him and reveals his limits. This motif mirrors Achilles' vulnerable heel and other mythic examples, where a single weakness introduces narrative tension. Vulnerability ensures that power is not absolute, preserving a balance that allows meaningful conflict and emphasizing that even the strongest figures face danger. His moral philosophy distinguishes him from any portrayals of ancient heroes. While figures like Hercules or Achilles pursue personal glory or respond to divine influence, Superman's motivations center on protection and service. His decisions emphasize empathy, restraint, and responsibility. These values align with traditions found in some later heroic narratives, where heroes act to safeguard communities rather than seek personal reward. The shift reflects evolving cultural attitudes toward heroism during the 20th century. Superman's relationship with Lois Lane provides another connection to ancient storytelling patterns. Heroes often share relationships with individuals who challenge their secrecy, understand their strengths, or influence their decisions. In modern stories, Lois's pursuit of truth parallels ancient narratives where companions or partners contribute insight, loyalty, or grounding. Her presence allows exploration of themes related to identity and trust. The Fortress of Solitude functions as a modern equivalent of the retreats used by ancient heroes. It provides a place for reflection, study, and preparation. In mythology, heroes sometimes seek isolated spaces to commune with gods, receive guidance, or reflect on their goals. The fortress contains Kryptonian knowledge, artifacts, and memory, bridging Superman's two identities. Its presence reinforces the theme that wisdom and contemplation remain essential components of heroism. Superman's stories evolve over time, adapting to changes in society. Early depictions emphasize social justice, focusing on corruption, exploitation, and the protection of ordinary citizens. Later stories explore cosmic threats, moral dilemmas, and philosophical questions about power and responsibility. These shifts mirror the flexibility of ancient myths, which adapt to the needs of new audiences while preserving core identity. The influence of Superman on modern culture is extensive. He establishes narrative patterns, followed by countless heroes, dual identity, symbolic attire, extraordinary ability paired with vulnerability, and moral clarity. His presence shapes expectations for the superhero genre, much like Gilgamesh, Achilles, or Hercules shaped early ideas about heroism in ancient traditions. Modern storytelling uses him as a reference point, whether in homage, contrast, or reinterpretation. Superman also reflects the immigrant narrative, a theme rooted in movement between worlds. His journey from Krypton to Earth echoes ancient stories where heroes travel across regions or descend from distant realms. His adaptation to a new environment, acceptance of new responsibilities, and development of a blended identity inundate with broader themes of cultural integration and self-discovery. Across comics, animation, and film, his portrayal emphasizes hope. This focus connects to ancient traditions where heroes inspire communities, maintain order, and confront darkness. The concept of hope becomes his defining contribution to modern culture, transforming the heroic ideal from one centered on conquest to one centered on protection and compassion. Superman stands as a synthesis of ancient and modern heroism. His story combines divine lineage, symbolic identity, moral responsibility, vulnerability, and exceptional ability. These elements reflect patterns found across millennia, demonstrating how ancient myths continue to shape contemporary ideas about power, duty, and what it means to be a hero. The long arc of ancient and modern heroes settles into quiet now, as if each figure, carved in stone, painted on pottery, inked in comics, or lit on a movie screen, steps back into the shadows of their own stories. The noise of battles, storms, quests, and transformations fades, leaving only a calm outline of everything they carried across time: strength, intelligence, discipline, vulnerability, and the longing to understand what it means to live a meaningful life. The air in this final space grows still and gentle. No armor weighs on the shoulders here. No distant city hums with danger, and no gods or cosmic forces wait to test the limits of endurance. Only the soft presence of these ancient echoes remains, steady, patient, and unhurried. It becomes easier to breathe as the stories loosen their grip and turn into a simple awareness of how far humanity has traveled in its imagination. Heroes who once crossed seas and deserts now drift like quiet silhouettes in the distance, carrying their myths lightly, without urgency. Their journeys do not demand attention anymore. Instead, they settle into a comfortable place in the mind, where meaning doesn't need to be chased or solved. It simply rests. The old struggles, monsters, storms, riddles, impossible tasks fade into a peaceful calm that asks nothing except stillness. Even the brightest symbols soften, a shield lowering, a hammer dimming, a cape settling to the ground. The world becomes quieter, slower, and softer with every passing moment. And as the rhythm of breath deepens, it becomes clear that stories, too, can rest. Their weight lightens, their edges blur, and all that remains is a gentle sense of presence, calm, steady, warm.